Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. I'll be your moderator. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. We're most interested in promoting good government and also informing the public of what's happening in government. So these series of videotapes and these shows, the Taxpayer Alert, are a series of interviews with people that know something. And so they can almost be training tapes about what's happening in the county at any one time. And this program is no exception. Our guest is Kevin Wright, our agricultural commissioner, and he's doing a fine job. And we're so lucky to get him. It's probably the first time that we're going to get a picture from the agricultural commissioner about what's happening. Kevin, welcome, and thank you for being our guest.
Thank you, sir.
All right, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's assume nobody knows you, and what should they know?
Well, I think the first thing they should know is that my background hasn't always been in government. Originally, when I first got out of college, I went in the Peace Corps, and I was in the Peace Corps for 2 years in India. And so that kind of broadened my perspective on a lot of things. Just it gave me a world perspective instead of a local perspective. And I came back from the Peace Corps, and I started working on fish farms, because that's what I was doing over there also. So I worked on fish farms in Louisiana and in Southern California, and then I came back and I had my own business in Oklahoma for 12 years, where I had 40 acres underwater, and I raised catfish and bass, and I provided those fish. In Oklahoma, they have a lot of farm ponds where they catch the rainwater during the year, and the farmers love to stock these ponds with the catfish. So that was my job, and that's how I kind of got the ability to communicate with ag people and ranchers, because that's what I did, as I sold them the catfish to their ponds. And so we got along well because they liked the catfish and I liked getting a little bit of money from the catfish so I could continue and go on. And the place that I worked my land was located on the Johnson Land and Cattle Company. And they were big ranchers and oil people, and I rented the 40 acres that were underwater from them. And I had a private enterprise that I ran by myself with a couple of part-time employees, and what I did, I'd take those fish to the farmers markets and up to the city to be marketed and to other ranches and things like that. So I experienced private industry and being one who was regulated rather than somebody who was doing the regulation for a good part of my life, really. I didn't join the Ag Commissioner's office till I was 39, and that was in Stanislaus County.
Oh, a couple of years ago.
That's right, a couple of years ago. And that was in Stanislaus County, and that's where I got my start down there. And I eventually worked my way up through the ranks down there and through deputy, and then when Mary Mutz was the Ag Commissioner here. And they were looking for an assistant agricultural commissioner, so I came up and worked under Mary for a few years. And when Mary retired, I was able to go ahead and fill her shoes. So I'm very grateful to Mary Mutz for providing me the opportunity to work in Calaveras County and work under her and then take her place eventually when the time came.
I saw you speak in front of the Board of Supervisors, and you were very impressive about your knowledge and also your dedication to what you're doing, and a sense of honesty that you have. You don't have any agendas. You just tell the truth. And this, to me, I thought was just incredible. And not that public officials don't always tell the truth, but sometimes it gets to be a problem. What exactly does the Ag Commissioner do in Calaveras County?
Well, the Agricultural Commissioner has been around for a long time in Calaveras County. And, I had this plaque And this plaque is intriguing because this was written in 1927 when the Ag Commissioner was called the Horticultural Commissioner and Quarantine Guardian.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
And the fellow's name was H.L. Leonard. And so I want to read this thing because it kind of gives you a flavor for what we do. So he wrote this letter to the ranchers of Calaveras County.
Can you summarize, because our time is very short?
Just to give you the flavor, though, dear sir, in compliance with the request of the property owners in your vicinity, I hereby proclaim, looks like August 5th, 1927, to be Ground Squirrel Week, and trust that during that time you and all other persons will do your utmost to relieve Calaveras County of all ground squirrel pests. The office is endeavoring to bring together all the property owners to assist in this drive against the ground squirrels. The state law demands that we kill the ground squirrels. Let's do it. Are you willing to give your wholehearted support and cooperation to this worthy work? Let's get together and make a systematic war on the destructive pests during the 2 weeks set aside for this work. Concerted action, systemic efforts, and community cooperation will get rid of the squirrels. Why be annoyed and lose your profits by the squirrels when you can get rid of them? You pay higher taxes to the squirrels than you do the assessor.
Well, sometimes what goes on seems to be a little squirrely.
Yes. Don't let the other fellow do it all. Fall in line and do your share. All property found infested with squirrels after May 1927 or whatever, which no attempt to control or eradicate has been made, will be treated in accordance with Section 2322 of the Political Code. Trusting to receive your hearty support and cooperation in this worthy movement, I am H.L. Leonard, Horticultural Commissioner for Calaveras County.
That is fascinating.
So that is kind of the thing that we do. Our basic job is to look out for pests of agricultural concern in the county and then try to do something about it, either ourselves or mustering the cooperation of the ranchers and growers in the county to go ahead and do something to abate their pests.
Like a star thistle?
Like star thistle, exactly. So with the star thistle, we have had programs that would help pay for some of the herbicides that they might use. Now that's gone away because star thistle has become quite the widespread. So nowadays it's pretty much up to them. But what happens nowadays is that a rancher or a grower will come and say, what can we use to kill the star thistle? And what we do then is explain the various options of the pesticides that they might use, the herbicides, of when they should apply them for the most efficacious use of those materials, and thereby counsel them and give them the permits necessary for them to do the work.
Now, the chemicals that are used to kill star thistle, are they do they decompose so they don't hurt the environment?
Yes, eventually they do. But of course they have to work a little bit to kill the star thistle to start.
Before they die.
That's right. So that's the two chemicals that are used are transline and milestone, and nowadays it's mostly milestone. And they do a good job, but you still have to be careful with any herbicide where you spray them. For instance, you wouldn't spray milestone between the rows of grapes because it'll go down into the grape roots and then come back up, and you'll have die off of your grapes. So even on the label itself, on the it'll say, not for use in the vicinity of grapes, but we have to remind them about that, and that's why when they come in our office, we give them that advice.
Oh, I understand. Now, you also, besides handling pests, and you also handle weights and measures. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Now, I'm called the sealer of weights and measures. for the county. And that program also goes back a long time. It wasn't always under the ag commissioner. I think they had a separate sealer. And originally the sealer was probably in the office of maybe the courts. But that would be back in 1920 or something like that, 1915. But by 1960, it had moved to the agricultural department. And those sealers' duties came under the venue of the ag commissioner.
Now, the scales that you seal, these are truck scales or scales for like in a meat market?
Virtually any scale that is used for commercial purposes. In other words, the weight is taken and it is used to conduct the commercial transaction.
Right.
Money is handed across, or even a barter, is supposed to be sealed by the commissioner, which means it needs to be tested and placed in service, and then we usually check most scales once a year and put a new seal. Now, we do scales and we do measuring and weighing devices, so the gasoline pumps too. So in Calaveras County, there's 30 gas stations or so, and there's probably 400 and some odd, maybe 450 or 480 gasoline and diesel pumps.
Wow.
And on every one of those, they'll have a seal. And on it says Kevin Wright, sealer. Now, I'm not the one who actually goes out there and pours the gas. We use 5-gallon containers. We pour a 5-gallon into this container that is specific to 5 gallons. It shows you exactly where, and it falls within the parameters. Then that pump gets a seal.
Now, do you have to pay for the gas?
We put the gas back in the tank.
That's
but
good.
I have one of the things that I really like about my office is that I have dedicated employees. I have good employees that make me look good, and I am very appreciative of that. And there's such a variety of things that we do in the course of a year, because we're a small office. In a bigger county, you can specialize in any one thing, pesticides, or the guy just does weights and measures work, or he does just pesticide work, or he does just quarantine work, and he becomes very good at that. But in our office, it actually requires somebody with a capacity to learn a variety of things, a large variety of things, and there's a lot of minutia, and they have to go back and look at it again and say, well, what did I do last year? How did I do this? And it's always going to be a little bit challenging for them because there's just so many things that require a lot of work.
How many employees do you have?
Well, in the whole office, I have 5.
Now, we consider the number of gasoline pumps alone, and all the scales and all the stores. Oh my God!
That's right.
That's overwhelming.
They keep them busy, and then the pesticide applications. Now, with the advent of the cannabis growers last year, we're getting over onto the pesticide side of things, or something a little more. We actually had 180 cannabis growers come in our office voluntarily on their own and ask us to provide them with information as far as what they needed to do to comply with the pesticide laws related to cannabis.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, and I think the reason why we had those people come in is because we did do a educational program for them very early on when the ordinance first went through up in Mountain Ranch.
Yeah.
And we told them that we were available for them to come in our office, and we welcomed them to come in. And that I told them we were going to treat them just like we would any other agricultural enterprise, and that's what everyone have to comply with.
Did you videotape it for a training tape?
No, but we did take a few pictures. But it was mostly my two employees who put that on, and they did a great job. Catherine Talbot and Justice Rasmussen. Justice Rasmussen is employed through the cannabis funds. And however, because we're so small, we can't just the work gets distributed through with everybody, and so he does weights and measures things too, but he also does it but everybody else does something too, because we can't really specialize in just one person doing anything. But in that particular instance, we were all working on the cannabis issue and providing some education outreach to those individuals, and they responded by coming in our office.
I understand that the Agricultural Commission also is concerned about land use issues, where somebody may have commercial property next to a ranch, and question may be what influence would that have on the ranch, and do you have much of that going on?
Sometimes, but not. We don't have too many conflicts. Calaveras has you might say a right to farm law. So if that farm was already established before that other enterprise came there, if there was any issues, it would probably rule in favor of the agricultural enterprise that was there to start with, if they were just doing normal
There'd be
agricultural
like setbacks
practice.
or something like that.
Yeah. And so I haven't really had too many conflicts between agricultural operations and the general public. A lot less than they would, let's say, down in the valley, where you have a lot of residences right next to a commercial agricultural place.
Right. Well, we haven't had very much development in the last 10 years.
That's true, and that's probably why.
Well, it wasn't because of you. I think you.
No, that's another thing, Al, is that in the 12 years that I've been working up here, the county has gone through just a lot of experiences economically wise. We had kind of a downturn in the economy, and then we got funds from President Obama for employment, which boosted us up for a little while and actually saved my job. And then we had the drought issue that we had to issue some. That's another thing that we do is declarations of emergencies, so that the farmers and the ranchers can get funds from the Farm Services Agency. So we documented the drought issue. And then, of course, we had the Butte fire, which was just devastating to everybody.
Yeah.
And then, we have the cannabis ordinance, and the cannabis issues come up lately. So it has been just a plethora of things to deal with. But I guess that's life.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. Okay, so when you get overloaded, then you may not be able to check a scale for maybe another year or so. That probably won't be your highest priority. You'd be more concerned with health and safety issues.
That's right. Sometimes, I have to admit, sometimes we do go more than a year without testing the issue. And in some cases, we have some devices on a 10-year program where we'll just test 10% of them. One of the things that we test are vapor meters, or gas meters, you might say, that are in the mobile home parks, and there's over 2,000 of those. So they're on a 10-year program. So once every 10 years, we'll get around to testing one of those things. But we also handle any complaint meters. They can the mobile home park owner can bring in any complaint meter at any time, and we'll test that right away. Just so.
A meter that's not functioning.
Yeah.
Not the meter.
Well,
the meter doesn't make the complaint. So the complaint meter is the result of somebody making a complaint.
That's right. If somebody makes a complaint, we'll go out and they'll take it off and they'll bring it in, and we test it in our lab.
When this happens, how many of those really are bad?
Not that many. Those things last pretty well, but every now and then you will find one that's bad, but it's usually that the person in the mobile home park might be using their stove as a heater or something along those lines.
Okay, so if they use a stove as a heater, then the carbon monoxide from the stove is going to fill the home, being a danger, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why you don't want people to use their stove, an open flame in the home for heat.
No, you don't. That's true.
In an oven, the exhaust from an oven also goes in the house. It doesn't go in a vent outside.
No.
Not normally. Okay, so gas fireplace is okay because it would channel the exhaust outside the home, so they get the heat and the enjoyment of the fire, but they don't die.
Yes, but
which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. What do you think are the most important ag-related issues in the county?
Well, the most important issue in the county is fire suppression, as far as I'm concerned. After the Butte fire, we all know what the Butte fire did to the county. And what we need to do agricultural is manage our rangeland and manage our forests in a way that reduces the fuel load. And I think that is our biggest. It's a huge challenge because it costs money to actually manage things. And whether you're the U.S. Forest Service or a rancher, to actively manage and keep your property in good shape it's costs money. But there's a number of things that the county can do to help along those lines. And one is the Williamson Act. Williamson Act allows
tax break.
A tax break to landowners who perhaps they have goats or they have sheep or they have cows, but if they have them up there in that area, they help the herbivores. They help to consume product that would normally go up in flames. So you'll have more open space if you have those things. So, and that's one of the reasons why Mountain Ranch didn't burn, along with the fact that there were some heroic efforts put in. There's large areas that were open space there around Mountain Ranch so that the fire didn't come roaring in as an inferno there.
I understand the timber industry was a good thing for forests.
That's right.
Because they spaced the trees up further apart, so there wasn't such a demand on water on the water table, which means you get less bug trees, and also you have less chance of fire because they remove the brush. Now, of course, they use herbicides, I think, at the time they plant, so that the little trees would not be overcome by the weeds. But,
that's right. So Sierra Pacific's forests are actually good for the county.
Yeah.
And because they're managed.
Right.
And anytime you have a managed area, you just have less underbrush, less fuel to be burned, and less possibility of an inferno. Plus, they take care of their own fuel breaks. So the other thing is, just as far as that goes too, is the ability to manage your fuel breaks and look at the county. I think it would be important for the county to look around their their cities and places and say, do we have adequate fuel breaks, and how can we maintain those fuel breaks?
Right.
And how can we help maintain those fuel breaks? Well, you have to use your herbicides, and if you have places where you can put grazing cattle and things like that, you want to encourage the use of cattle. You want to encourage the use of herbicides. You want to encourage farmers to visit the NRCS to get loans so they can work on clearing brush. And you want to encourage the air pollution people to allow the burning of brush and to allow for controlled burns.
Oh yeah, you're going to have a forest fire is a lot worse than a pile of brush being burned.
Right. So a little bit at a time is better. They say that the fires that were down in Napa and places like that, those fires put more CO2 into the atmosphere than all the cars and trucks in California in a year.
Of course.
So, and they did it in a week.
Now, since CO2 is not a poison, it's really a nutrient, and the plants need it, and so that could be a good thing.
That's right. Plants and trees sequester CO2.
Yeah.
So yes. So down the road when they talk about the credits for that sort of thing, the forest people and the range people need to line up and make sure they get their carbon credits.
Okay. Now, let's see. We've got 3 minutes, and we covered what the most important ag-related issues in the county. I think you pretty well mentioned that that related to fire.
Yeah.
And then, and what is the ag commissioner's role as far as the cannabis grows in the county? Well, I think you inspect the registered or the applicants for registration. Is that what you do?
Well, as I said earlier, what we do is pretty much treat them just as if they were a regular crop.
Right.
And so we're concerned with them, worker safety, that they protect their workers who are applying pesticides, that they apply pesticides that are safe to use on cannabis, which there aren't that many that are, but there are some that are labeled for general purposes that are almost organic, you might say.
Right.
And they can use those. And so we kind of instruct them educate them as for what they can use, that they also have to do use reports like any other ag commodity. And so these things are, and also in the new ordinance, state regulation, or they mention the ag commissioner as someone who may be doing enforcement and outreach for the state licensing. So we may be checking to see if they have state licenses.
Well, I sure appreciate you being our guest. We learned so much, and we just begin to scratch the surface.
That's right.
Thank you for watching. Taxpayer Alert. See you next time.